Welcome back to another episode of the Me and Money podcast. Elliott has been suffering through his 2025 tax projection and seeing how much in self-employment tax he's going to be paying. So we thought it would be good, especially with open enrollment season upon us, to talk a bit about total compensation. And Elliott, when I say total compensation, can you just explain that a bit to our listeners and to our viewers? Like, what do we mean by that? Is that my salary? Is that my salary plus my bonus? What does that really mean?
I think a lot of people immediately go to salary and maybe salary plus bonus. I would include all the benefits also that your employer is paying for. So if that's health insurance or disability insurance, life insurance, basically anything that is included in your total compensation that you also have access to on the benefit side, there's some sort of value there that is maybe different from total compensation at a different company and what benefits they provide.
Yeah, or your own company, right?
That too.
Because I have a lot of folks who are maybe working on that independence path to becoming an entrepreneur, and there's one thing they always know about, and that's the taxes. So I think we're going to dive into all that. We'll save that tax bit for the end. But yeah, Elliott mentioned a lot of really great pieces. And I think employee benefits have really evolved over, I would say, even the last 5 to 10 years, right? There's so many new things out there, like, fertility benefits, adoption assistance programs. I mean, now with student loan payments, like being a bit more into that space as well. There's just like new things every day, or like therapy, like EAP type benefits, employee assistance programs. Like there's just a lot of maybe not fully utilized pieces that people think about, or they just see them as free benefits, not realizing that, the employer does have some costs on their end for those programs. So with that being said, where should we start, Elliott?
Maybe we should just go down the list of possible benefits and the value that we've seen for certain people in the past. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, let's start with the easy ones though. So let's talk about that good old free money that we can get from our jobs, right? So this would be things like the 401k match, right? So typically you're going to see what, 3 to 6%. 6 is probably not too
Maybe
common.
10?
Maybe 10.
I've seen some employers at 10.
Yeah. So again, when you think about that right off the bat, right, that's like 3 to 10% of your salary being added right on top of it. And there are those plans too. I would say they're even slightly more valuable if you don't have to make a contribution to get them, but that's just free money, right? So, I mean, right there, you're already looking at 3 to 10% of your total compensation being added. And we're just at the first benefit. Of note on 401ks, anything else you'd want to highlight there? Like,
I would just say like plan investment options, plan expenses. How much of that are you paying versus your employer? What investment options do you have available? That can, I mean, we look at this every day. So we've seen some really good plans and some really awful ones. And the difference over a lifetime, like if you actually stay with that employer for multiple decades, I would venture tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, potentially.
yeah, yeah. And especially if they have, like most modern plans have like a mega backdoor Roth opportunity. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that employee compensation, but you're not going to be able to do those kind of things in like your IRA, right? So
Yeah, if you have the means to save and you can get 30 to 40,000 more growing tax free versus an employer that doesn't offer it. Thankfully, a lot more offer it today, but that I would consider that employee benefit.
yeah, I don't know how you put a value on that. It's going to be different for everyone, but yeah, it is just one of those things where it's kind of a priceless feature. If I'm going to be honest, if you can make use of it, right?
Yep.
All right. On the topic of free money, I mean, this will be a two-pronged approach to this, but usually nowadays, anyways, you're going to have either a high deductible health plan or a health reimbursement, arrangement with your employer. So those may just be free dollars again that you're getting from your employer. It could be a few $100s. I've seen it all the way up to like $2,500 for families who are using an HSA where, again, it's free money, right? And so depending on how much you're making, obviously that's going to impact what percentage of your total compensation is. But I don't meet too many people, regardless if they're making 100,000 or 400,000, who are going to, sneeze at an extra $2,500 being given to them for free. Of course, that opens up some tax benefits as well. And we haven't even gotten to the premiums, right, Elliott? So when people think about their total compensation and how that ties into their health insurance, what would you say there?
Some employers cover none of the health insurance premiums for their employers. Some pay 100%, some pay a high percentage. So, I've seen it where maybe it's 8 to 10, maybe $12,000 a year worth of value to the employee because the employer is covering that. Now, you might have to pay for a family member, and it might make sense to do either that plan or a different plan entirely. But, let's say you're making 100 grand and they're covering 100% of the premium and another employer is not, that's an extra maybe $10,000 worth of benefit to you. As a percentage, that's 10% of your compensation. Pretty meaningful.
Yeah. So again, 401k, right? 401k and health plan, we're sitting somewhere between 13 and 20% of your total employee compensation. And I would echo a lot of what you're saying, Elliott. It's crazy. And for those of you listening, there's kind of a cheat way to do this, where if you go find your W-2 from last year, if you are an employee, there should be a box. Box 12 should have, there's a bunch of codes there. I believe it's DD, that will have what your employer paid for your health plan. So again, before you think about quitting or switching jobs to go chase, a few $1,000s more of salary, you may want to look at those and see, like, is the health plan at this new one better? I feel like most people are smart enough to look at that and ask themselves that question, but understanding how that's paid for and what your responsibility is compared to your existing employer, that may shift that math quite a bit. In fact, this year I had a client who's thinking about changing a job, and if they were going to do that, they're going to switch onto the other spouse's health plan. And his employer came back and said, look, if you do that, we're actually going to have to reduce your salary by $20,000 in order for you to go onto this health plan. And that was a pretty big, I thought that was a little outrageous, first and foremost.
It's a little strange.
But it just goes to show that that's a big needle mover, right? I think most people would rather not have that expense or reduction in income. So again, just be thoughtful when you're thinking about making a change, because benefits are about a third of the picture.
Yeah. And more so than the dollars, I might just add, you hit on it slightly, but I just want to call it out, particularly in today's climate, is does the employer offer the type of health insurance that allows you to see the doctors and get the care that you want? I think a lot of people sometimes are surprised. They switch, they assume, oh, I'm going to have decent health insurance. And then they go there, the plan's crappy and they can't see the doctors that they want, and or it doesn't cover the things that they want. And so the dollars don't even matter at that point. They just don't have what they need.
Yeah. And just a quick tip on that, whether it's your existing employer with multiple options of, health plan, or you're thinking about making a change, you can usually find the summary of benefits. It's usually like a blue and white spreadsheet type looking document, but those are super important to look at, especially if you're making use of services like mental health or a therapist or anything like that. The copay difference can go from, $30 copay to, well, you're paying cash until you hit your deductible. And depending on how your cash flow situation is, that can be a really, really negative change if you pick the wrong plan. So I always just encourage to look at those documents. They're usually pretty straightforward, or you can just probably get the plan number from the employer and say, hey, do you take this insurance to whoever it is you're seeing? Same with prescription drugs. I see that a lot. That's usually more of a Medicare situation where you're really digging into that, but prescription drugs can really add up fast, especially if you have a high deductible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So health plan and 401k, we've already put a big dent in our 30% of total compensation. What else, Elliot? What else should we be thinking about?
For me, I'm a big stickler of what does the disability insurance policy look like at this employer? Not necessarily because of cost. Frankly, I don't actually want my employer, if I were not self-employed, I don't want my employer to cover that cost. I want to pick that. So if I ever need benefits from that policy, the benefits would be tax-free. Whereas if the employer pays and I get disability benefits in the future, it's taxable as ordinary income. So just a minor thing to note, but more so, how much benefit would it actually provide and how does it define compensation? Is it just my base compensation? Does it include bonuses in that calculation of disability? And more importantly, what's the definition of, like, does it have own occupation for the definition of disability? And is that for the entire length, or is it more common like group plans where it's only the definition for 2 years, in which case, maybe you can't do your job for 2 years, but after that point, I always give the example of you can take ticket stubs at the movie theater. That's, for most people listening, that's probably going to pay a lot less than people who are listening to this, in which case the policy won't necessarily pay. So I think that's really, really important and something people skip over because they're like, hey, I'm not going to get disabled. But, if you ever met someone where that has happened to someone, you're looking at that policy with scrutiny. So I just encourage you to look over that disability insurance. One, do you have it? And then two, what does it actually look like? And don't just go off the 2-page summary. Get the actual 30, 40-page document with all the definitions and all that and do research. Because this is one where if you do have a life-changing disability, you're going to wish you had read that.
Yep. And again, just a little add-on quick tip there. Like if you have the supplemental ability to buy up more benefit, be sure that you're aware of that because there are usually income caps. Like it'll say 60,000 or 60% up to $10,000 per month, and then at that point you're uninsured. So if you don't have that buy up or you're above that threshold, you could really see a reduction in your cash flow. I guess I'll just take that one and jump into life insurance. Yeah. I think this is one of the more unique choices that you can make with employee benefits, because a lot of times, especially as we get older, we usually run into more health issues and potential uninsurability. Now, I don't think a basic group life plan is going to be the savior of your financial plan if you are in that situation and don't have life insurance, but there are usually some amounts that you can take even on the supplemental side to get some death benefit if you do not qualify for life insurance and you need life insurance. So I think that's a really unique thing. And again, that's like one of those nuanced cases where it really is a priceless benefit at that point, because if you can't get it and you need it and you're able to get it through a group plan, that's a dollar for dollar benefit. Again, I don't know if you'd call that compensation, but it is true benefit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, again, though, just look into those where, if you are unhealthier, but still insurable, it could make sense that it's more favorable for you to buy it through your employer, because the group rates are usually favorable to those with health issues and unfavorable to those who are healthy. So you kind of got to know where you're at in that spectrum, and make a plan accordingly with that one.
Yeah. And I would just add, my preference is always to have insurance outside of work for life insurance. But again, if you can't, invaluable to have it through work.
Yeah. And things you'll want to look at too is just like how, if you were to leave, how does that policy convert? Are you able to take it with you? Is it portable is probably the word you'll see inside of your documents. Because the worst case would be it's not. You get laid off or fired or can't work anymore, and then you lose your insurance. And that's quite frankly when you're probably going to need it the most in that type of a situation.
And I'm going to add that step further, that if it is portable, research the cost, because I ran into someone in the past who, hey, they just read it was portable, started working with me. I said, hey, what is the cost to actually do that? we looked it up. I don't remember the benefit was, but the cost was 16 grand per year. It
Yeah.
was very cost prohibitive to actually take that with them relative to the benefit they were getting.
Yep. Again, private insurance probably preferred,
Yeah,
but it can be invaluable if you need it.
definitely.
I usually don't talk or feel too great about like the accident insurances or the critical illnesses, but again, I don't know. They don't really add too much, I guess, compensation. I will say one thing I didn't realize is a lot of people can use those hospital indemnity plans to like cover visits for like pregnancy and labor and delivery. So, I mean, I'm just going to share like we went through Allison's open enrollment, like we're trying for kids, and if we go to the hospital and we're there for any amount of time, it could pay us up to $4,000. Like the benefit itself is going to cost 260 for the whole year, but to me, that's like it's a gamble worth taking, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, so again, that's I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you added that to like Allison's salary, that's like 5-6% additional compensation just for that benefit. So there are little opportunities like that out there.
Definitely.
Yeah. What else? What else do you see, Elliot?
I've seen this more, and this is, I would say, more in the last 5 to 10 years, access to legal plans. And I will say they often get mixed reviews of like how good is the actual advice and accessibility of attorneys you can contact. But, I'm looking for someone's on a pay stub and it might be like, I don't know, $15 a month. So is it worth the gamble to pay $15 a month that if you do need some legal advice or something like that, it's probably less than a 1 hour consult with an attorney anyway, if you can get something out of it. So that's one. Again, not a huge thing, but if you're enrolling, you could consider whether that's a benefit to you.
Yeah. They also usually do allow for basic estate document creation. So if you have I would tend to generalize and say simpler situation,
Yeah.
you could probably save probably $500 to $1,000 on maybe even more in that case, depending on where you live,
Yeah.
on just getting a basic set of documents created. So yeah, and then there's a lot of the. Are there any other main benefits, Elliot? That I guess the big one we didn't hit on, stock compensation or equity compensation.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump on that one first?
I mean, I think anybody who's in that type of role very familiar with whether you're gonna have RSUs, ISOs, non-qualified stock options, whatever it be. In some way, you're getting compensated with stock moving forward. A lot of that's going to depend on how well does the stock price do and how do they reprice those grants that you receive. But at least working in Seattle in the tech world, that compensation was often many multiples any sort of base salary someone would get. So all that to say, it's a huge benefit, but a lot of it comes down to stock performance.
Sure.
I've seen stock compensation where you're making $1 million a year off the stock, but your base is only, I don't know, 200 grand maybe.
Yeah. Well, or it could be a simpler equation, right? Usually with a more established public company where maybe you just have access to an employer stock purchase plan, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you can contribute up to 10% of your salary to that and you're getting a discount on the stock, I mean, that's a 10% discount, right? So if you can do 10% of your salary at a 10% discount, that's using a sample salary of $100,000, right? That's $1,000 of savings right there. If you can contribute 10% and you save 10%.
Yeah. And you're probably saving 15%
Yeah.
realistically. But
Right.
yeah.
But again, so that's another 1 to 1.5%.
Yeah.
And that math scales, right? If you have a bigger salary, then you do the
Sure.
same percentage. So it's just one of those things where it sounds like a minor thing, but you can add 1 to 2% of your salary just by making use of those two.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of the, I guess, softer benefits. I don't know like how utilized some of those pieces are, but like I know Allison has like the Wellness Wisconsin. So if we go to the doctor and go to the dentist every year, we get $125 each. Like, again, it's not life-changing money, but it is something. And
It's fun.
all the things add up, right? And then you
Yeah.
have like some of those where you can get free like financial coaching or budgeting help or access to like a therapist 10 times a year. Free parking could be another one.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
for a
Parking
bigger,
would be a big one.
right? But those are all things where it really does, when you take all of those small benefits and add them together, it can, again, add like another, shall we say, 2 to 5% of your income. And pretty quickly, when you start to add that with the 401k and the health plan and the free money from matches or HSA contributions, it really does make up a big chunk of what you're being paid.
Yeah, it could be tens of thousands of dollars very easily.
Yeah. And then too, I always like to tell, the folks considering self-employment, right? And I joked with you about this before, Elliott, before the call today. But, a lot of people don't realize that your employer is paying half of your FICA taxes, right? So, your Social Security tax, your Medicare tax, those alone, right? You're going to be right around another 15%
Yep.
of your income. That's not being, well, it is being taxed, but it's not being taxed to you. It's being taxed to your employer. And I'm sure that's even more true, Elliott, in states like Washington and California that have mandated state like short-term disability or family leave
Sure.
taxes and insurances tacked onto them. I'm not familiar, but are the employers paying those other halves too?
So I don't know for California, but I know as I was leaving Washington State, this may have changed. Self-employed people could actually opt out of the long-term care
Got it.
tax there.
Yeah. But still, as an
So
employee, they are paying some of that for you, right?
yes, I'm just saying if you
Yeah.
went self-employed, you wouldn't necessarily pick up that end of the
Sure.
tax.
Sure.
Still picking up the 15, but not necessarily the long-term care for that specific state. I don't know about California or if it's changed in Washington.
Yeah. But then again, there are obvious advantages to being self-employed as well. So
Sure.
it's all just to say, right? Like in order to go make your salary as a self-employed, at a minimum, right? Like even forgetting the benefits, you're going to have to at least earn 15% more.
Yeah. You have to do the math and definitely you start to realize you have to make a lot more self-employed.
Yeah. So anything else you've seen, like any other, I guess we didn't even really get into like, I don't know, sometimes there's sabbaticals, right? I know
Oh,
Epic here in
yeah.
Madison, like every 5 years you get to go on a huge sabbatical and they'll pay for the whole darn thing. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that
including I think 2 other people to go with you. So it's like meant to
is,
be a family thing.
is it too? I thought it was for sure your spouse or significant other, but maybe it is too.
I thought it was, but I'll
I,
check.
I
I
haven't,
play tennis with some people who work at Epic.
yeah. So, I mean, there's things like that, or, I mean, even just vacation time, right? Like the difference in paid vacation time can be a huge difference from company to company. And I mean, that can, in some case, right? A week of vacation, if you're making $100,000 a year, that's not chump change, right?
And how is vacation paid out if you leave? Right? Like a lot of companies have switched to unlimited PTO or paid time off, nothing to pay out at the end. Whereas if you accumulate, there might be something to be paid at the end. It may not be dollar for dollar, but you get something.
Yeah. So there's
I mean,
that, and I mean, there's the list goes on and on. I'm sure there's some crazy things
there's
out
probably
there,
something we're
especially in,
missing, but
I mean, especially in like Silicon Valley. I have to imagine there's some pretty lucrative
yeah,
benefit
like
packages
free
out there.
meals, right? Like laundry done or dry cleaning. Like you saw that. I think that's going on less these days, but I know, back when I was working in Seattle, that was a big, like, what sort of benefit are we getting there? Or do you have discounted lunches? I'm pretty sure Epic around here is pretty cheap lunches there.
Yeah.
So it's not free, but far less than you trying to get the ingredients, cook at home, spend all that time. So there's some interesting arrangements that employers have come up with.
Yeah. And I would say too, like professional development. I know it's true in our
Yeah.
space, but I've also seen it in, some of my clients who work for like biotech companies, like, paid conferences, paid continuing training and education. Like those things are not cheap and add up very quickly. So there's a lot to be considered when you're thinking about making a change. But hopefully this episode just made you realize maybe you're listening like I don't have any of those things. Like that might be a really good thing to, take heart to and maybe go find someone who's going to give you some of these awesome benefits.
I'm laughing. I'm hoping people have at least one of these benefits.
You'd
Maybe
be
they don't,
surprised.
but I know. But I think in short, add up the benefits that you're getting, and maybe you do that now just to figure out like what is your employer offering. So if you ever another offer did come across your desk, what's the equivalent for them?
Or you realize I'm actually being paid a lot more than I thought I was being paid, and maybe this job doesn't suck so bad.
I don't know how many people are going to reach that conclusion, but
I don't know. I'm trying to be the optimist here, Elliot. I I believe.
fair enough.
But no, sometimes jobs just suck and the money doesn't matter. If it's that bad and it doesn't make a difference, well then I think you have even more clarity that you should quit your job after you have a
Yeah.
well-rounded financial plan, of course. So,
Well, with
anything else
that,
anything else you want to add, Elliot?
I think that's the perfect place to wrap it up.
All right. It's a good thing I got him laughing, so this is going to be a good episode. But it was good to see you, Elliot.
Thanks, Matt.